we were gracious enough to have artists and also to just speak about their experiences thus far as they've been serving for a number of years with us. And so to begin, I would like those at the table to go ahead and state their name, your occupation, your role on the...
Morning, everybody. My name is Sam Draper. My actual job is the Community Relations Manager at Orlando Immunology Center. But what we do on planning councils, we actually kind of set those titles aside, and we come in here and we work as individuals, not as organizations. My role on the planning council is to serve as the information or guidance on an issue or presentation or data, so that the planning council can make the best informed decision that is for the entire community and not one particular organization or another. How long have I been involved with the planning? What I would like to say to start this out with everybody is, because I know some of you are familiar with it and some of you aren't, that's fine. What we're going to do, and like even the format of the meeting might be a little foreign to you, that's fine. Ask questions, write them down, we'll be able to answer them at the end. What we really want today to be about is about bringing more people into the planning council, talking about education and empowerment of the entire community. So, you know, and you've even seen some of us work together, like, what do I do, or what do you do? And I think that that's what this is really about. It's about educating and empowering each other in the community. So if you do have questions, I encourage you to just write them down, and we'll make sure that we answer them all at the end. Thank you guys for being here.
All right, I'm Aaron Sanford Weatherall. I currently work for Hope and Help Center as the Linkage and Prevention Coordinator in my daytime job, but here at the Planning Council I am the junior co-chair, so anytime Sam is not available or can't make it to a meeting, I step in for him. I also sit on 2 of the standing committees, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and step in for those chairs whenever they are not available. The other seat that I hold here at the Planning Council is I am the Prevention Planning Consumer, which is basically the Planning Council on a statewide level. So while here and at the Planning Council here, we focus on this area, the Orlando area, there's also a statewide council where we talk about things that are happening in the state. And that is a great meeting because it brings all of the minds together from all of the different areas of the state to talk about what's happening in our state. We look at numbers across the board, we look at funding across the board, and we share best practices with each other as well. So. I have been involved with the Planning Council now for about 6 years. We'll talk a little bit about how I started with a different group that now is part of the Planning Council once we get a little bit farther into this. Pass along to you.
All right, well, good morning again. My name is Violet Scott, and I'm a community advocate / grandmother. And I've been involved with the Planning Council since like 2001. I am a person living with the AIDS virus. I was diagnosed in 2001, which is like 18 years ago. And I've just been kind of going in and coming out and going in and coming out. But this time I just decided to kind of stick to it and commit myself a little bit. So my role is that I am the consumer representative, and I'm going to do the very best I can to, you know, continue to learn and share with the community to, you know, enhance their quality of life.
My name is Gabriel Martinez. You guys can call me Gabe. My daytime job is Sexual Wellness Coordinator for UCF. So we do HIV, risk reduction counseling, all that kind of stuff. And I also do in-home therapy for foster children. My role here is an associate member, specifically with the PR and Marketing Committee. That's where my passion, I guess, lies. It's a lot more social and interactive. And for those who know me, know that I'm very social and interactive. I've been with the Planning Council since 2016. And it happened because I was the Director of Clinical Services at the center. They were already part of the Planning Council, so I came in. So for those individuals who may not know much about the Planning Council, once you hear all of this, I highly encourage, because I came in very blinded, and I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, even what the Planning Council was, to be honest with you. But it's been definitely very enriching, both from a consumer standpoint and from a professional standpoint, because my role here has helped me understand how I can advocate for myself when certain things are happening or not happening and I need them to get done. So I definitely do that with my clients now so they have an understanding of what our role is in assisting them.
I'm Ira Westbrook. A lot of you know me, a lot of you don't. I work in the community. Front desk at the Miracle Love. I'm on the prevention part. I work with all the volunteers that come in, and I'm a part of the planning council. And I've been a part of the planning council almost 5 years now. And I'm the co-chair of the needs assessment. And the needs assessment is where the funds go and how they are divided into different parts. Housing could be prescription, but everything, but that's a very important part. And that's, instead of getting lobby information or person-to-person information, it's very important for you to come to the planning council meetings or to the community meetings where you can learn firsthand. That way you won't get secondhand information.
Thank you, everyone. So for the next set of questions, I'll be asking a few of the members at the table their perspective on just the differences between the work that we're doing and the committees that we work on. So the first question is, what is the Planning Council and what does the Planning Council do? So Aaron, if you wouldn't mind answering that.
Sure can. So I'm going to try and shorten this up as quickly because we do a lot of work and a lot of great things. So I'm going to try and tie it all together. But for those who don't know what the Planning Council is, the Planning Council oversees planning and the funds that come into the Ryan White system here locally. So there are two types of Ryan White funds that we get from different sources, Ryan White Part A in this area and Ryan White Part B that we oversee as part of the Planning Council. Ryan White Part A covers the Orlando area, the 4-county area, which is Orange, Osceola, Seminole, and Lake. And Part B, while it covers all of those areas as well, also includes Brevard County. Most of the money from Part B goes over to Brevard County. So we really are responsible for looking at the planning and the spending of those 5 counties to make sure that we stay within the means and make sure that at the end of the year we're not scratching our heads and hoping that more money is going to come in quickly. So the other thing we do is we plan. So we looked at, for those that don't know, when President Obama put the HIV plan in place, we took our local data and the things that we were doing and created a plan for this area of what we're going to do to make sure that by 2020 we have an answer to what we're going to do to stop HIV from being spread in our area. The Planning Council is governed by the what is considered the CEO, which right now is the Orange County Mayor. So all of our positions are appointed by the Orange County Mayor. We would vote on who we want to select for those positions. Then it's sent to the Orange County Mayor's office, and then they sign off on us being elected into our positions. So that is the important thing to keep in mind. You've noticed we've been talking lots about Robert's Rules and having minutes and agendas. We are considered a consumer advisory board, so that's why we have to have those things in place, because these things do get shared with Orange County government as well, and we want to make sure we're all kind of speaking the same language. So that kind of explains why we talk lots about Robert's Rules and a lot about the agenda and the minutes piece. The Planning Council also helps plan events and community events, World AIDS Day, National Testing Day. Those are days that we plan events where we can all come together. But the most important part about the Planning Council is the place for consumers and advocates and professionals in this field to come to a place and look at this without our name tags on, without thinking about what agencies we're affiliated with, and come up with answers on how to better help our community. As I said, Sam and I both sit on the statewide community. We get to go and share the amazing things that are happening in this area, and there really are great things happening in Orlando. So that's the nice thing about this, is it really gets to get a group of people that really are passionate about fighting this disease in a place to come up with different ideas on how to continue our forward motion that we have going on here.
Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome.
And so for each of our committees, I'll just again be asking each of our members that reside on that committee to just give a little bit more information on what those committees do. So for the membership committee, Violet, if you would just be able to give us, just a few tidbits on what the membership committee actually works on.
Okay, well, the membership committee is responsible for the member orientation and training And, let's see, recommendations, we recommend to the executive committee about, what we think should, happen, or what we've discussed in our meeting. And, let's see, monitoring, reflectiveness, and,
Representation.
yeah.
PIR.
That's
Yeah.
all part of the
Yeah,
the representation
Yes,
that
yes,
the
yes,
body
yes.
has towards the
Mhm.
actual population.
And, the implementation of open nomination process for members and associate members. So we are the ones that receive the applications for, the new members, and we, look over them and, make decisions, and then we forward, those decisions to, the executive, committee. We're also responsible for, like, maybe coming to your organization or your group and sharing what the planning council is all about, in hopes of encouraging you to come out and join or participate, or, encourage your clients to come out and be a part of the body, as well as, like today, the community meeting.
Next up, we have the Service Systems and Quality Committee. Sam, would you be able to say a few words about the tasks that we have?
Yes. Basically, we're looking at the entire HIV continuum of care. So if you're a person that enjoys data and enjoys moving entire populations forward as opposed to one person or one group, that's what this committee is about. We look at that information. It comes from the Florida Department of Health, which is comprised of many of the organizations that you see around the table. And once we look at that data, we then have to make decisions based on that data on how to best provide prevention and care for this area. Monitoring the effectiveness of the services and performance of standards and measures. Look at best practices, identify those, try to implement them, encourage organizations that are around the table to implement them. Standards of care, quality of management, the assessment of the efficiency of the administration mechanism. Like, these are a lot of big words. The reality is that what this committee does is for the average person going to one of the organizations out there, we're trying to make sure that money is spent in the most effective way in the most effective populations, and that's why we have to constantly reevaluate, and we have to look at data so that the populations that are most impacted are receiving the money and the funding that is necessary to produce outcomes. Long story short, at the end of the year, we get to look at some numbers and say, oh wow, like we changed this population's viral load from X to Y. Or we might see something else in another area where we might need to look at and see if we are moving in the wrong direction. And that's kind of what this committee is about. That's why it takes everybody around the table, because we do need people who are data crunchers and things like that to actually move HIV forward. So,
I have a question, please.
yes.
Data, how fresh? 2015, 2016?
We look at data fresh, hot off the presses.
Same year?
Same.
Last year?
When I say hot and fresh off presses, let's be clear about a couple of things.
Yeah.
So it does come from the Florida Department of Health. So what happens is I think like it comes from an organization. They report, then the Department of Health actually has to review that and make sure that there aren't duplications or whatever, and then we use that information locally. So I don't know exactly how long it takes. Sometimes it's 6 months or a year behind, but when I say that, it is the absolute latest.
Usually testing data comes out usually sometime between July, August, September, somewhere in there from the previous year. So, so we got the 2017 data, I believe September of last year, somewhere in that neighborhood from the testing data. So
if there's any trend, you catch it.
Right.
Right. We also look at our existing data within this area, so that data is always fresh. And
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you gentlemen. So next we have the Needs Assessment and Planning Committee. I know, Ira, you said a little bit about it as the vice chair of the committee a little earlier. So Erin, would you be able to just kind of add to what else the Needs Assessment and Planning Committee works on?
So on the opposite side of things, while they're looking at the data and looking where the need is, the needs assessment is looking at the dollars spent. So we are ending the end of both contracts for both Part A and Part B. So right now, this is the time of year that we're having to look at budgets and make tough decisions as a group as to, okay, we need to discontinue funding for this in order to make sure people can still get their Medicare. So we have to look at the different subjects and really look at the budgets, how they're being spent, and also make recommendations to both the Part A and Part B offices that are overseeing the money on what we believe the Planning Council needs to be focused on. Obviously, medical care is important. Medical care is the most important thing that we do. We don't ever want to see someone not be able to get their medications because we're overfunding something else. So that's what the needs assessment does, is overlooks those things and also looks at the statewide data that's coming through. Are we putting a lot more funding into something when another area has found an easier way to do it and save money somewhere else? So it's also important for us to look at what other areas are doing. While every single area of Florida is completely different, we can share best practices with each other to figure out how to save money so that way we can pull more people in and help more and assist more clients.
Okay, great, thank you. Next up, we have the PR Marketing Committee.
So while they're stressing out, right? Now, PR marketing is stressing. So our main thing is, what's our marketing strategy? What's our recruiting strategy? What is our 1 minute selling point for someone who has no idea what this is about that's going to entice this person enough to at least come to one of our committee meetings or just a general body meeting so they can learn more? You know, when it comes to our big events, I mean, the entire planning from venue to food to location, and that alone takes 2-3 meetings because we're all trying to debate what's the best location. The great thing about what they're doing is when the needs assessment committee, we know where the money is being spent, right? So as a PR marketing committee, we say, okay, this is what we can do with this money. When Sam and them are looking at all those numbers and we get them, okay, well, where is this event going to be held that's going to target this specific population that might be disproportionately affected? Those kinds of things. It's fun in the sense that there's a lot of socialization, and I always encourage people who are in this committee or individuals who are not afraid to speak in front of people or to a stranger, anything like that, because it creates, how would I say this? Because the other stuff can seem so mundane and so dry. I don't want to use that word. Dry.
Thanks, Yasmin.
Thank you. This is a way for you to get a different look at how such an important committee can still take the information that is given to them and provide an event or create an event that is going to not only affect us in the room, but affect those individuals who attend. You know, we take care of all our Facebook stuff, and the thing that I'm mostly proud of that happened last year is our newsletter. And that was something when I came in 2016 that was not there, and we have all come as a community together, and we're able to now tell what's going on at Hope and Help or Miracle of Love. We're all doing the exact same thing, right? And we all go about it sometimes in different ways, but this is a way to have a consistent marketing strategy. And the great thing is that as a consumer of AHF, when I go into AHF, I see the newsletter. When people come into my office at UCF, I see the newsletter. When I walk into different agencies, it's there. So I can see how an idea has manifested into reality. So that's what the PR Marketing Committee is all about. How do we get the information out there, ringing sirens, knocking on, you know, pots with spoons, that's a Puerto Rican thing. Those kinds of things.
I have a question for you. Most of the meetings, are they all AM? Do you ever do PM meetings?
So we just recently switched to PM and then just recently switched back to AM. We do our very best, and I'll say that the chairs and the co-chairs of the committee do their very best to try to make sure that we choose a time that everyone would be able to attend, but like everything else, it is not perfect. So our meetings were from like 10 to 12 or something like that, and then it switched from 5:30 to 7:30, but then that caused other people, for example myself, unable to attend the PR marketing committee because of my other responsibilities. But as a result, it has been switched back. So I think we do our best to make sure that we incorporate everyone, hence why the minutes and the agenda is there. So if you weren't there, never feel that because you weren't there, your voice is not heard. You're always more than welcome to email David or someone and say, hey, I want to add this. Or the great thing is they still have the phone option and the internet thing. I don't know if it's the go-to meeting. It's good because I'm able to see everything that she's doing on the computer while I'm in my office if I'm unable to come in and those kinds of things.
Thank you, Dave. All right, so next up, Ms. Violet, if you would just give us, some more information on why this committee, so the community meeting, is so important in the work that we do here at the community.
Well, it's important because, you get a chance to engage people from different walks of life to educate and, share the information so that people can, understand the ins and outs of what's going on in the Orlando EMA.
Thank you. And then finally, we have the executive committee. And so if both our co-chairs can just kind of give us an idea on what is the committee and what is the work that we do.
So you've heard us talk about these different committees that all do their work. So the executive committee, is comprised of the chair and co-chair of each one of those other committees. Basically the executive committee needs to kind of help put together any information or documentation for the full planning body meeting. I don't know if you've counted or not. We have 4 different standing committees and the community meeting, the executive meeting, and then once a month we also do the community-wide planning body meeting, which is open to the public. Everybody comes and sits, and we kind of go over all the different things that we've accomplished during the course of the month. We review the bylaws, policies and procedures, all that kind of boring stuff. But to kind of go back on a point, what I want to make really crystal clear is that when we say community planning body, every decision is voted on, and we all have the right to ask those questions. So for example, like the changing of the meeting time, that's all community driven. That's driven by the individuals around that table. So for example, if a lot of people wanted to come on board and change a time, this organization is driven by the community. I always want to reiterate that. Planning Council has always, Planning Council support these other individuals. They've always been very open to that. So even if you don't understand exactly all the different things that go on, once you get on board, you would have the ability to affect change in the way that you thought, would be best. And everything that we do is voted on by everybody, and that's one of the great things about, this planning body is that it is definitely a community effort.
One thing I will point out about all the committees that we've discussed is if a consumer has a challenge with getting services and writes in either to Planning Council support or comes to the community meeting or comes to any of the standing committee meetings, they have an opportunity where you see floor open for public comment to make any comments. The one thing I will point out about that is we are not, as a Planning Council, able to talk about a specific agency or a specific person that is giving out a service. However, if it's, I've gone to 5 agencies and no one's been able to help me figure out how to get my medications, that's an issue we all need to know about. We can't specifically talk about a provider and say, John Doe at XYZ agency didn't help me. But if it's really a concern that is happening across the board, that's something we need to know about at the Planning Council, because as a Planning Council, we need to try and come up with a solution that would go through the committee level first, then go to the executive committee, and then be brought to the full floor. So our Planning Council support team is an amazing team. They take emails and they take phone calls and redirect them, but you also have a voice as a community member, if you're not a member of the Planning Council, to make those things known in your meetings during that public comment that you see listed. It's kind of right in the middle of the agenda for today's meeting, that we had those comment cards available for anybody that needed to make a comment about things that are happening.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, for any future questions coming up, we'll just be expecting 1 or 2 individuals at the table. If you feel impressed to just say a few words about it, then you're more than welcome to. So how does our work impact individuals?
I got shouted out. How does our work impact individuals? I mean, I can answer by speaking about my life and how it was when I was diagnosed and me trying to figure out and navigate and not understanding all the pieces of that puzzle. So how does the work impact individuals? I think we do a really good job in trying to make those pieces fit for certain individuals. Every case is different. You know, I'm a gay Latino from New York. So that's gonna be a different experience than the black gay guy from Orlando, for example. So I think that we do our very best to cater those needs, figure out the pockets in the community where those needs can be met, and then do our best to connect them. So I figured everything out on my own, and it was mostly, one, the kind of person that I am in general, but I also know that I come with a sense of privilege and education that I didn't have prior. So I'm always thinking about what happens to that individual who doesn't have the education, doesn't have the transportation. I'm blessed to have a car, for example, those kinds of things. So I think that what we do is allow those individuals to see how all these pieces fit into the one picture and then help them navigate. I hope that answers.
I would add, like, one of the things that we don't really talk about or focus on, it's interesting because on one end, we lose the name of our organization as we come in. In other words, Planning Council is truly a place of service to the community, and especially those that we're trying to prevent HIV in and those that already have HIV. The Planning Council, I think there are around 4,500 individuals that are in the Ryan White system of care. And what's interesting is, like, we take our collective experiences and make data-driven decisions to make sure that the individuals that are walking into any organization across this, spectrum of care, they get the same level of respect, dignity, and treatment that you would at one agency at another. And, like, for a good example of how this impacts people, like, we realized that we needed to institute training for front desk individuals at organizations. So we put that on our goals, and we actually accomplished it. So how it impacts people, that's a very good, for example. I realized, like 11 years ago, when I was diagnosed with HIV, that the systems of care were very disjointed. And while I know that we don't live in a perfect system, I think that we have collectively made leaps and bounds, and are coordinating in a way that has never been done before, providing easier access to individuals, because I think ultimately that's what we're trying to do, is provide the easiest access across the spectrum to any individual, no matter what their background is.
Thank you, Sam. So how do you get involved with the Planning Council?
I can take that. I guess it depends how involved you want to be. That's always a good way to start. If you are a community member and want to come to this community meeting, it happens once a month. Violet is here with her smiling face to welcome you every single month. So if you're a community member that wants to come to those meetings, it doesn't necessarily want to be in those committees that we talked about or be directly involved with that very dry data that we talked about earlier and things like that. But you don't have to be part of those committees. You can still come to this community meeting and have your voice heard. However, if you are interested in joining the Planning Council, you can become either an associate member, which is someone that maybe just serves on one of the committees, is not a full voting member at the full Planning Council, but has the opportunity to come into the meeting that they're most passionate about. You heard Gabe talk about that earlier. He's most passionate about that PR and marketing piece. But if you're also interested in really jumping in and being involved and being a voting member at that level, then you would become a full Planning Council member. All of those would start with showing up to meetings and letting the Planning Council support team know that you're interested in joining, and they're going to help walk you through that process of what it looks like to join.
Thank you.
Oh, and applications are sitting in the back table as well. Violet asked me to remind people of that.
Okay, so for the next set of questions, it'll be more so again along the lines of each of these members' experience. And so I'll just be selecting again one or two individuals to just kind of highlight their experience on the Planning Council. And so the first individual I want to ask, Ms. Violet, why do you enjoy this work?
Well, I enjoyed this because I love people, and I get a chance to build fresh, new relationships with other people. I'm much older than most of the people. I'm almost 60 years old, so for me, it's, you know, like exciting because they're young, they're educated and energetic, they're not afraid to get on the airplane and fly like I am. So, you know, they're like, you know, forerunners. And so, you know, I just enjoy, you know, being a part of it and learning. I'm learning from these babies, and so that's, you know, that's a good thing because I've been around for a long time, and you know, I just enjoy seeing them advance and, you know, bring current information back to us. And I know what both of these fellas are talking about, but you see how it just flows out, and that's a good thing. You know what I'm saying? That's good. So, yeah.
I also want to ask Gabe, why do you enjoy this work?
Why do I enjoy this work? Well, first and foremost, I think one of the biggest pieces to why I enjoy this work is honestly a lot of the people in this room. I came here 7.5 years ago alone, and I really still don't have any family members that have come down. And in some way, shape, or form, a lot of you guys have been an extension of that. I don't have individuals in my family who I can sit down and have these type of conversations with. Either A, I'm the know-it-all, because I'm the one who went to college, or B, they're just not interested. They don't understand, they don't get it. And I can sit with certain individuals in this room and have these type of conversations that I normally wouldn't have at home. Another thing is it allows me to be out there. People do not believe me when I say I'm an introvert. Guys, I prefer to be alone all day, every day. But I'm a very good extrovert. And I think that I use that as a strength. I don't care how much I might desire to keep tasks alone and to myself. When I work with a group of people, I think the impact is larger. And then when we see those numbers come in and we see how those bits of pieces of work that we did actually impact the bigger population, that's what makes me enjoy it more. Because at first I was like, what's my role here? Who am I? I'm one person in this. And you look at executive committee, ooh, that's the important committee, where PR and marketing is not as important. And you later realize how each and every single one of those committees actually play a role, a bigger role into how we manage our system of care here.
Thank you. Next question is, why does our work matter to you? And so I wanted to ask both Ira and Sam. Why does this work matter to you?
From my experience, I like working, I love working with people. And my goal is when I leave out, I have a set number that I'm going to, even if you get one, you done your job. But when I leave out, anytime I go, I have a set number and I get that number. I've always been a gifted person, and some people I tell them my age and then they say they don't believe it, but it's just I've been in the medical field over 25 years. I've been a licensed practical nurse, I've been in the funeral home, nursing home, did it all. But I just love working with people. And when you say event, oh, I'm up for it. Let's go. And when you start seeing me slow down, that means it's time for me to go, but I ain't gonna slow down. I'm keep on keeping on till it's time to stop. I'm 51, I'm proud of it, I'm happy, I'm HIV positive, but that ain't stopping me. I'm gonna keep on keeping on till it's time to go.
why is this matter to me? I think it's because, you know, I think a lot of us that have, you know, experienced HIV, it was kind of a traumatic experience, and ultimately, I don't want anyone else to have to go through that. Ultimately, my goal is to end HIV, y'all, and we need everybody. If you're out there watching or you're around the table and you're negative, you are welcome, you are needed. Just put that out there, okay? This is not for people of this or this type, right? Because there are many individuals out there that are negative, and we need those experiences around the table so that we can better impact those different populations, because, you know, we do talk about PrEP and prevention at the table as well. But I think that, you know, at the end of the day, why this matters is because I know that the work that we do has an impact not on things or systems and stuff like that. That's where it starts. But it has an impact on people. And when I get a call from a friend who is like, I didn't know where to go or what to do, so they finally kind of break down, as we all do, and ask for help, and they get the services that they need that are available. You see what I'm saying? Like, we have these tools in our hand, it's just a matter of getting to them. And they get the services that they need, and they're thankful, and they're happy, and they're healthy. There is no better feeling than that. And that's why we need more people around the table, because we have a lot of resources, but it's a matter of making sure that our community, which is you guys, are able to help us provide easy access to all those different tools and services. So that's why this matters to me, is the actual people that I know that we help at the end of the day.
Thank you, Sam. Next question is, what is the most meaningful experience you've had on the Planning Council? And I wanted to address that both to Ms. Violet and Ira.
I think right here, right now, this experience, because in my wildest dreams, I had no thought or intention or anything of being so it's a meaningful experience, the right now. It's an experience, but it's okay.
Truthfully, I'm a little hard-headed. And I listen to the little birdie. Sometimes you'll have a friend or associate will tell you, well, you got a lot of input, why don't you put it to use and this, here, and that. And the best thing to do is to be in a community where you can help. And if around the table, you can, whatever you say, your input will be thought about. And you know, when you're making decisions for different people, that's something that's helping someone. And the best thing to do is, instead of talking about it amongst yourself, you talk about it where you can mostly get things done.
Thank you, Ira. All right, so the next question is, what do you know now that you didn't know before joining the Planning Council? And so this question is addressed to Aaron and Ms. Violet.
Well, I think that something that I know now that I didn't know before joining the Planning Council plays a lot into my story. When I was diagnosed in 2007 here in Orlando, I was blocks away from one of our providers. Had no idea that they existed. I was alone. I felt alone on an island for many, many years, not even knowing that there was a Ryan White system of care out there, that there were people out there that had HIV like me. They told me not to talk about it. So when I started working in the fields, I also still didn't feel like I was making an impact. Yes, client by client I was making an impact, but I didn't feel like I was making an overall impact. My boss at the time said, it's time for you to start going to these meetings, and I started coming to what at the time was called CFHPC, which was the Part B body. We combined them both just a couple years ago. I started going to those meetings and finally started to feel like I was making change for the whole system versus just client by client. Still doing that client by client piece at work, but making change for a system. So I think that now that I'm a member of this planning council, I feel like I'm really making more of a difference for a full community versus just those 1 or 2 people that I may come in contact with every single day.
Okay, what is it, what do you know now? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Well, I guess what I know now is that, I understand, the duties of the planning council, more. When I was diagnosed in 2001, they held the planning council, down across from Lake Eola in that big hotel. That's not Lake Ivanhoe, but anyway, the hotel that sits across from Lake Eola. And I must say, it was a rowdy bunch back then. They were really, really rowdy. And I also had a couple of rowdy friends, but you know, once I understood the infrastructure of, you know, the planning council and its functions and what it does and what it doesn't, you know, do, it was just easier for me to kind of like adapt, you know, to changes and, you know, different things. Back in 2001, I met someone that really their outpouring, compassion, empathy for me really shaped me into the person that I am today. Because if it hadn't been for him sitting on the other side of the desk, I don't know what would have happened to me. So, you know, I've learned a lot along the way. I even think he was the person that actually, you know, he just enlightened me, and he never let my hand go, even when I thought that I was all grown up and I was grown and everything, you know, I could do this, I could handle this and stuff. He's always been there for me. And we have our little fights like brother and sister, because he is my brother, but, you know, I know he loves me and I love him, and he is just always there, you know, for me. So
Thank you,
I'm just grateful for him today. That, you know, if it hadn't been for a case manager like him, I'm telling you, I would have been lost in the shuffle. I would have actually been lost. I probably wouldn't have even been here if it hadn't been for him grabbing me and taking me to the planning council. And, you know, I didn't understand it, but he took me and he introduced me to things. And then another friend came along. She was kind of rowdy, and I didn't kind of see eye to eye with her, because she would get it stirred up crunk for you. But, you know, I just learned some stuff, you know, along the way. And I'm just grateful to be here today and to be a part of, you know, whatever is going on. I'm just grateful, because it's been a long 18 years. And I'm really grateful today.
Beautiful.
I'm sorry.
The next question is, what is one thing you use in your daily work that you attribute to receiving from the Planning Council? And so this question is addressed to both Sam and Gabe.
Okay, so we go through, like, everything that we do here applies to the work that I do. Both when I was a medical and non-medical HIV, case manager, but also, my job today at Orlando Immunology Center. It provides the best and deepest mechanism in the entire area to truly understand HIV in the populations that are impacted by it and affected by it. So that means, of course, the negative people and, the positive people, because I think for us to really, change the direction and end the epidemic, we really do need to understand not, the numbers and data, which is great, but to go deeper dive and actually understand the people, what's going on in their lives, the reason some of those decisions are made. Those are some of the things that we get to do. And I would say that's probably the thing that empowers me most in my job is the Planning Council is the one place where we can come and get a full depth of the community and truly understand other people's lived experiences and also how that impacts the data that we're reading. Because I think it's the where you can bring those two things together where you actually move populations forward. So I literally use what I've learned here in Planning Council every day in every aspect of my work. And I'm grateful that I get to bring that information back to my office as well and educate and empower them as well. So.
Very similar to Sam. I mean, what I do on a daily basis is a lot of the stuff that we talk about here and all of that, I guess. For me, what I've learned here is all of you guys have been sitting there patiently listening to everything that we have to say. I come from the DCF social work background where everything is very fast-paced and assessments and are we removing this child, are we not, what are we going to do with the parents, what are we going to do? It's decision-making within a minute. You've changed probably 2 to 3 people's lives in making a couple of decisions. I've learned from being in the Planning Council, being more patient in listening to what everyone has to say because of the way we work and the way our Planning Council and our committees work with the Roberts laws and all of that. So I think I take that now in practice because when I have a student sitting in front of me who's 18, 19 years old and they came to my office because they're having symptoms of an STI, right? So the whole world is done, it's ended, they're nobodies, they're ashamed, they have guilt, they have all these things that they feel. And before, my decision making would have been very quickly. This is what you need to do. Go to the health department. Here's a piece of paper. Run. Bye. But now, connecting to what Viola said about Patrick, taking that time to listen, to really understand where this person is coming from, so that you're able to assess and then provide the best decision. I think I learned that here. Because I have to, I'm very impatient, guys, believe it or not. So I sit here and I'm like, oh my God, what's the next question? Or let's move on. But everything that's being said is important in one way, shape, or form. You might not catch everything that I said, but you might have caught something that Sam said. So sitting there and actually listening is what I will say that I'm very grateful that I've learned here because I think it has helped me in my practice. And hopefully, hopefully one day, someone will talk about me the way she just spoke about you. And that is such a humbling thing because I'm trying not to catch her emotion, but it was such a, I've always thought I'm this boy from Brooklyn, from the projects, I'm nobody, because that's how you grow up to think. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm sitting on chairs that make me somebody. And I hope that someone will one day feel like in their lives, I was that person. And then I think I've lived a full life, so, yeah.
Thank you, Gabe. All right, so
Can't put us together.
I'm trying to get a girl caught up today, guys. I know when to shout, when to cry.
Somebody say shout.
Do it.
All right, so final question is, why should someone join the Planning Council? And this is open to any and all members at the table.
I would say to get involved, be involved in your care. If you're a consumer that's using this system, if you are somebody that is not living with the disease and want to be out there and be involved in the change that we're seeing in our communities, that's a perfect way. We need people from every walk of life with every story behind them, because the decisions we make aren't just based on HIV or just based on Orlando or based on those stories. We need the different types of people around the table, because we all have great stories to share and all have great things that we need to bring to that table to make the decisions that are right for our community. This is something that we are able to control here in Orlando. There are a lot of things that are out of our control. This is something that can be in our control as consumers and advocates.
I mean, we're the bomb. So
you get to hang out with us.
You
cool
get
people.
to hang out with us. And in essence, you know, you create certain friendships and stuff, and that is great. But I think about what impact you want to make, small or big. And if you believe that this can be a door that opens you to get that impact, then come on in. Because I came in, like I said at the very beginning, very blind. I didn't know what it was. And as I learned about it by sitting in the committee, I realized, wow, this is so much bigger than me. Hence why I started feeling like, oh my God, I'm finally doing something that has purpose and has meaning. And for that is why I've been here almost 3 years. Everyone else plays a great role, and the relationships that we have are amazing. But all in all, it has satisfied that part of me that always felt like I came here to do just more than, you know, whatever I came here to do. So.
Okay, yeah. What Gabe says, but, well, yeah. It's a challenge, for me, because, you know, I'm a grandmom, first, but like I said, I've decided to, commit myself to being a part, you know, of the committee so that I can, you know, help other people. And I'm just growing up. I'm almost 60, but I'm still growing, because now I'm able to, like, separate my passion and what I want to do for other people from my grandchildren. They're going to always be there. But, you know, it's time for Violet to some gifts and do some things in the community that's needed. So I feel like I'm fulfilling my long-awaited purpose, and I'm finally here, and I'm not going to give up. I'm going to go forward, because there is purpose in the pain.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving forward.
I would say that why someone would or should, you know, I look far and wide because I was, you know, answering calls and doing all these little things for friends, right? Here's where you go, this is what you do, this is how you do it. But at the end of the day, what I wanted was more. And so then working at an organization or volunteering at an organization wasn't enough for me, right? And there is no other planning body out there that is dedicated to ending HIV. We work on the National HIV Strategy, which is, dictated by HRSA and the CDC. The body that we are on is a legislated body. So in other words, like when Orange County government or the city of Orlando or the state of Florida looks at how to change populations, this is the body that brings the entire community together to make those changes. And I wanted my voice and the voices of others that are silenced because of their own shame, fear, guilt, and stigma. I wanted to express those voices, not just, you know, to my friends and that type of thing, but to make them part of the statewide and national conversation. And that's one of the things that Planning Council allows us to do. So if you're the type of person that wants to affect change across entire communities, then Planning Council would be the place for you. It's a lot of hard work, but I'll guarantee you this, there is nothing that has been more rewarding than some of the work that we have done here collectively together, because we check our egos and stuff at the door. We work on finding a solution that is best for the entire community, and that's one of the things that I love about Planning Council, working together to find the best solution for an entire population, not just one person. So if that's the type of work that you would be interested in, then this is the place for you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Any final words from anyone else? And so I do know that Ms. Violet just stepped out really quickly. She wants to come and say a few words as well. But I would like everyone in the room, first and foremost, to just really applaud and thank, our members here that to come speak to us about the work that we're doing here with the Central Florida HIV Planning Council. It's definitely not easy work. Definitely day in and day out, we have to look at the big picture, but where there's one that can get affected, it makes this work matter, and it makes this work worthwhile, honestly. So thank you guys. So we're just now wrapping up. I don't know if you have a final word that you want to say prior to the ending. Okay. Okay, so if there's anyone out here that has a question that they want to ask prior to us wrapping up, this will be the moment to do so. Yes.
I was looking at the agenda, excuse me, February 19th is the next meeting.
Yes.
And it would be at 11 o'clock as well.
So right on the agenda today, we actually have a conversation about adjusting the meeting time. So it may or may not be at 11 by the end of this meeting. Yes. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
I'll make a comment. As a past member of Planning Council, and I'm keeping young, I'm 67, but you see that guy gives a class at the gym and is a killer. He can do splits and everything. Yes. Yeah. I attend his classes, that's how I keep, and of course with my friend, my HIV, we stay together happily. He wants to keep me alive because he wants to stay alive. But when I die, I know where I'm going. And I'm being cremated, so my virus will be burned and I'll be gone. So, I've been on medication long. The idea was in the beginning, because I made it to vice chair, and then I finished. That's it. Then I went to work for the state, and I couldn't represent, so I had to change things. I couldn't attend, but now I have applied again, because I want a case manager. It burns me to hear that someone would get diagnosis and not be told where to go. Because we fought for that. Remember, we fought for housing and dental, and just the medications came, not enough money, and I saw fights because there were going to be an ethics committee that would decide who would take medication and who wouldn't. And the planning council, us, the rowdy ones, the quiet ones, the nice ones, the angry ones, all of us got together and said, no, who is going, Dr. Johnny, remember Dr. Johnny from the health department? He was in it. It was going to be a priest, some rabbi, some representation, and they were going to say who gets the medication. Somebody who injected drugs would not get the medication because they were not going to be adherent. And they used to be called compliant. We made a change. We said, no, not compliance, adherence. And also, the couples that were discordant, they used to call us, no, no, no. They changed it to magnetic. You know, we had a lot to do even with the wording of how they would, the PLWA. I never say that. I say a person living with AIDS. I'm not a PPW, whatever. No, no. You don't take away my person. I'm a person living with AIDS. So then the money was coming, but the money would stay at the over there by Semoran. Before we started meeting at the hotel, we used to meet by Semoran with the medical council over there. They would take 5% of the grant. Then Orange County first. They would take 5% of the money. Then it would go to the people who manage the grant. 5% came up. By the time we got it, it was very little. And the people, because they were testing more, so more people were coming in, and the medications were so expensive, there was no money. So we had to fight and make sure they did it, because they were putting the money wherever was good. Oh, food pantries. And guess what? The food pantries, the agencies they were making $25 per food pantry per bag, but they were giving out $7 in food to people. I was part of the finance committee, and we said, oh, no, that's not gonna happen. Well, blah, big mouth. Little woman, big mouth. No. I said, well, okay, then stop. I'm opening my own food pantry at home, because that's it. $25 each person. Hey, I'll be rich now. So finally, they changed that. The people could edit, and you know, we also were very big on conflict of interest, because the person who used to work at that agency was in a finance committee. We didn't know. So this person, of course, it approved that one Christmas we gave 5 bags of food to people. It was eventful for that agency. So it was planning council. And the good thing is we went to that park on Holden Avenue, and that mayor we had then, that lady, Chambers, or whatever her name, she gave us a proclamation. I got mine. Because it's Monday. The money would not come if we don't have the people who are gonna plan it, watch it, and control what the money is. And that's where we make a big difference as planning council, and as telling people over there, you know, because they would tell us, oh, the transportation person, I've been here an hour. That burns me, because we fought for that money. Or when people say, I'm not taking my medication, we fought for that money. Oh, I don't want to apply for the housing help. They made too much paperwork. Yes, paperwork is part of the grant and the people and the government and all. But please apply and use the money, because we fought for it. We went and we made faces, and we ran up and down Tallahassee, up and down Washington, having to shake hands with those ugly people from the government. We did it. And we did it for women and children too. There was nothing. And then they did the Title V. And we went and fought for the kids to get ACT, the pregnant women. So we make a difference. I wish more of us were here, but enroll, and then you have a voice. Not at the planning council. By then, the thing started the committee. As a committee, we can say, this is not working, then blah, blah, then it gets presented to the planning council. It doesn't happen just going there and argue. And that was what people didn't like. They would go and say, nothing happens. I go and tell, because it starts at committees. I don't want to take all your time, but that is a reason to do. And the other thing is, tell everybody, which I did. And now I'm working again as a case manager, and I'll tell everybody, become an activist, enroll, just come to a meeting, come to 2, and just, even if people don't become planning council, they have an idea where the money's coming from, the work that we did, and they're gonna enjoy and appreciate the services. Thank you.
Thank you.
And go to this class.
Yes. So one final comment? Yes, or question?
So fill out an application today. What's the turnaround time for acceptance into the planning committee, and what are the steps between in order to be on the planning committee?
Okay. So there's definitely multiple steps into becoming an actual full planning council member or associate member. And so as you fill the application, if you can finish it today or whoever, hand it to myself, Melanie, or David. We're the planning council support team, and so we'll go ahead and take it, process it. You'll receive an email from us stating the future meetings that are coming up. Because there are requirements that you have to meet prior to being considered by our membership committee as an actual candidate for membership, basically. And so once that happens, those requirements will be detailed to you via email and phone communication. We'll go ahead and take it to the membership committee. Then discussions are had, and then after that, interviews are done as well. Usually quick and easy interviews, but we definitely want to learn about you as a person and also the committees that you are interested in joining as well. And so then it goes back to, you know, the membership committee. That information is processed, and if carried forward, things like that, conversations will be had, but from that point on, it goes all the way down to full planning body, where the actual membership will go ahead and appoint you as a member. And so that's basically the process in short. Yes.
If I may, a couple of things. We will be there to help with the entire thing. All of our meetings are public, so I would encourage anybody that's thinking about planning council to come to any and all meetings. I would also say this, we are a community planning body. So at any point, if you hear or see something in a meeting that you don't understand, would like additional information on, Planning Council support is always here to answer those questions. So even if you're not on the Planning Council, you can always send them an email and they bring that information back to us. I say that because one of the other things that I love about Planning Council, it is reflective of the population. So those are some big words. That means that essentially the people that are on Planning Council are an exact replication of the HIV epidemic in the community. So if 70% of the community are purple people eaters, then 70% of the Planning Council has to be purple people eaters. So if you're a yellow people eater and you have applied and there are plenty of yellow people eaters, then that means that your application might not be, am I correct in saying this? It might not be one of those ones that's elevated at that time to actually be on Planning Council. But just because it's not, does not mean that you don't have a voice and that your work and participation are not valued and important. That's why I think it's so important to come to meetings and to be vocal and to send emails and have those conversations, because whether or not you're on Planning Council, your information and what you're able to bring is important. And I know that was a long, complicated question, but I mean, that's a lot of times, sometimes there's confusion because the council has to be reflective of exactly what's going on in the community. So that's why sometimes it might be a while before one member actually leaves and another one is able to come on, just so that there's kind of full transparency with that.
Most definitely, yeah. So there's definitely, as you said, Sam, a lot of things that we look at, but we do encourage, continued participation by our community, so this space or even as a public attendee to any other meeting is always welcome. Continue to learn, continue to provide input, in the processes that we have already, you'll be able to still be involved whether or not you are actually a member of the actual planning council. Yeah, thank you. All right, so at this time, okay, fine.
I have a question. The Planning Council as a body, do they educate healthcare providers in paperwork required to get payment from Ryan White, either via caseworker or however it's submitted?
That would be through more the Part A office, Part A or Part B, depending on which Ryan White they are using. We don't directly get involved in care. So if there is paperwork that needs to be filled out, that's going to go over to our Part A grantees over there. They're over there, and Yasmin just snuck out. So, but they're the ones that actually take care of the paperwork piece. We're the ones that would say, we want $1 million to go towards those types of services. So we would not get directly involved with providers.
But I think that that's a good point. Like if Planning Council kept hearing from multiple individuals in the community, that's why your voice is so important, that there were, clients were hearing that the paperwork this or paperwork that or whatever, we don't necessarily tell the doctor what, but we elevate that to Planning Council support and the grantee because they might not be aware that there are some issues. And we would say, grantee, how is this going? And they would reevaluate and look at that. Maybe provide trainings or educational support, whatever is necessary to make sure that everything is done smoothly, and then they would then report that information back to us. So I think that's a very good example of how your voice around the table matters and actually impacts the entire system of care, because if it's you that's speaking out, there are probably other people that are impacted. But you can very quickly see how that will be done. We don't necessarily directly talk to the doctors. Our role is to provide that information to the grantee, because the grantee wants those services provided in the best, smoothest way possible as well.
So thank you everyone for your participation and input. And again, one more time, a round of applause for our members. So as you are chairing this community meeting, and Aaron as support, if you two can stay up front. I have identified 3 seats around other individuals, 4 seats anyways, would like to either stay up front or we'll go to a different seat.
Do we have to stay up front?
We are short on seats, so.
Oh, I have my own seat, I reserved it.
Oh, yes. I would like to be in the front. Right, so we got to figure out.